Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Prairie Wildcat. If you're new here, be sure to like and subscribe. I put out videos every week. This week's video is kind of interesting. It's sort of a PSA as well as like get to know one of the candidates. Currently back home it is election time. I had heard something like only 30-something% of registered voters actually voted in the tribal election, y'all. I think that is just terrible. So that's why I'm kind of making this video. I just want to hopefully get y'all to vote, okay? Let's see if we can up that, you know, maybe by 70%. Let's get 100%. That would be nice, but honestly, if we can get 50 and over, I'd be happy, okay? I just wanted to make this video, like I said, to get more people to vote. Because, you know, as you're right, as a tribal member, vote in the election. Vote, vote, vote. Because it could be 1 point off and, hey, somebody didn't vote out there. That could be the difference in an election. So I just want to make this, like I said, to get y'all to vote. Share it with all your friends, you know. Just vote, people, okay? Principal Chief Mr. Richie Sneed, shout out to him one time. He's going to be calling me in just a second, and we're going to do a little interview. I actually went on Instagram and Facebook and got questions from people throughout the community, things they want to know either about Richie or what his plans are for the future of our tribe. So that's what this is going to be. He's going to call me here in a little bit and we're going to get it started. So stay tuned, boys. Guys, he's calling. He's here. He's here. Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Richie.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. How's the weather out there?
It's hot.
I'm Richard Sneed, Principal Chief of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, and honored to be here to have this discussion with you today.
Alright, let's start with the first one. So they say you're only as good as your team. It's kind of scary to think about what that team will look like under another chief. The image and professionalism of our tribe is important. What do you look for when building your team?
Well, first and foremost, I want people who have the qualifications, first the education and experience, and folks who have a vision for where the tribe could be. I think one of the issues that occurs with government, all governments, is, and the federal government's a great example of that, and of course as tribal nations we experience that often in dealing with the BIA and the IHS. Things move very slowly. People, you know, the system just kind of falls into this pattern of behavior where it just creeps along and there's not a lot of efficiency. So I look for people who really believe the best about us as a people and believe that we're able to accomplish anything we put our mind to, you know, with some hard work, that we can get it done. So I want people who are highly qualified, highly educated, but they have to have a vision and a passion for what they're doing.
Alright, yeah. Sounds like that makes a pretty good team right there. Well, tell me a little about your family. I know you're grateful for the military service of our tribal members. Tell me about your grandfather, Vernon Sneed, who served in World War II. And then would you just mention a few of our people who first come to mind in their service of our country?
So I come from a family of veterans. You know, as you mentioned, my grandfather, Vernon Sneed, he was in the Army. He was World War II. He was killed in Germany in 1944. My great uncle, Samuel Otter, he was in the Navy. He also died. He died at sea. Everyone on his ship was lost. My father is an Army veteran. My sister was a Navy veteran. My brother was a Navy veteran. My wife's a veteran. So a lot of service in our family. When I think about, you know, the tribal members who have served, the first person that always comes to my mind is Chief Robert S. Youngdeer. You know, he was. You know, we just lost him this past year, and he was always a hero of mine, simply because you know, he was a Purple Heart recipient, he was Marine Corps, he was Army, and he was just, he said what was on his mind. He was a straight shooter, so I really appreciated that about him. Of course, Charles George, you know, Congressional Medal of Honor winner. So we have a long history of veterans who have served. Connie Swaney, you know, she was a local hero as well, who we also lost, you know, beloved one of the tribe. I guess the thing that's a little bit troubling to me is that if you look back, if you go back 20 years ago or so, really, and to be completely honest, if you go back prior to gaming, it was very common for Cherokee tribal members to join the military. And there were a lot of reasons for that, right? I mean, if you go way back, there was not a lot of work. There weren't the resources to go to school. And so much like myself, I joined to get the GI Bill so I'd have money for school, and a lot of tribal members did that. And so it was very common to have 5 or 6, members of a class that graduated would join the military, and that almost never happens anymore. So we have virtually no enrolled members joining the military anymore. That's a little bit sad. I think it's good if you have the opportunity to serve, that you should. You'll learn a lot. It'll grow you as a person. But I would love to see more young people get involved.
All right, on to the next one. This one's kind of specific. Would you ever vote against the enrollment of an EBCI infant that all required documents as well as Cherokee Tribal Court affidavit of paternity had been submitted for enrollment? And then can you tell us your stance on enrollment and disenrollment?
All right, so let's deal with them separately, okay? So on the enrollment side, first of all, I don't have a vote, okay? So I'll start with that. I'm on the executive side. All of those decisions are handled on the legislative side through the enrollment committee, and also by the existing ordinances that are in place, that have been approved by tribal council, ratified by past chiefs, and those laws are on the books already. On the disenrollment side, I guess one of the things that came up, I guess it's been probably a little over a decade ago, there was the big push for DNA testing, and it was like, there are people on the roll who shouldn't be on the roll, and my concern there is that, I asked the question, when people would ask me the question you just asked me about disenrollment, I'd say, well, let me ask you a question. I'd say, well, why all of a sudden is everybody concerned about it? And they'd say, well, I don't know. And I'd say, well, how is it those people were allowed on the roll in the first place, right? And we know that there were people who paid $5 and they were placed on the roll, and tribal leadership knew about it. Well, why did they do that? They were trying to boost the number of people on the roll so that we would have a larger distribution of BIA funding, IHS funding, etc. And I said that occurred. That was before your time and my time. And I said those folks who were placed on the roll at that time have now been members of our community for well over 40 years. And I said, if you just leave it alone, the problem will take care of itself, because they don't have the quantum to be on, their kids are not going to be on the roll. So once that generation passes away, it's done and it's over with. And I said, my great concern is that if we get to the place where we say, well, we're going to put all these people off the roll, I said, are you going to go put them out of their home? I said, I'm not going to. I said, and the reality is, I said, if you play this scenario out, somebody's going to get hurt. And I said, and on that day, we will no longer be able to say that, the federal government was wrong when they, took our land and all this, because we're doing the same thing for the same reason, greed. I said, because nobody cared about it until per capita came out. That's when it became an issue, was when per capita came out. And somebody ran the numbers on that years ago. And I think, if you took all of those people who are allegedly not supposed to be on the roll off the roll, I think it would change your per capita, like $100 or something. I mean, it was a really small number. And so the question you have to ask yourself is, are we willing to throw our community into turmoil for an extra $100 every 6 months? And I'm not, so. Okay, all right, moving on to the next one. So I've noticed that you're very much in support of preserving our culture and our heritage as Cherokee people. I've witnessed you pressing Congress about returning some of the original homelands over in Tennessee back to the tribe. Can you just tell us some of the history there and then the present status of returning those lands? So the lands we're talking about are the Cherokee Overhill towns of Tanasi and Chota. And for everybody listening or watching, Tanasi is where Tennessee actually gets its name from. And those lands, it's about 80 acres. Those lands were supposed to be taken into trust back in the 80s. And the issue at hand back then was, they were going to build the dam there, and then they were going to flood the valley, and they were going to flood Chota and Tanasi. I think there were 140 grave sites that were excavated, and the remains were placed into a mound over there by the Sequoia Birthplace Museum. Everybody's on board. Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, and I'm told they hardly ever agree on anything, and the TVA board is like, this is the right thing to do, we need to convey that land back to the tribe. The local counties of Monroe and Vanore County, Both counties are on board. We've gone and I've met with the mayors of both counties and the county commissioners. They've all sent letters of support to the Tennessee senators, to the North Carolina senators. Everybody's in support. So we got our bill through the House last year, but then it got onto the Senate side. And what most Americans, and I'll be completely honest, I was unaware of at that time as well, because I naively thought we had this thing called a democracy. And when you get a bill through the House and it goes to the Senate side, then they're going to vote on it as well. But that's not how it works. Unless it's a bill that is a must pass, or unless you can get your bill attached to a must pass bill, all it takes is one senator to oppose your bill, and it will go nowhere. And so one of our own senators, Senator Burr, opposed it, and he opposes it because he puts his Lumbee recognition bill in every year, and we oppose that. And so it's just politics now. It's he's not running again, so we can wait him out another year, I guess. But it's sad that that's something that was supposed to have happened, back in, I think, 1985-ish, somewhere in there. Once again, broken promise from the government, and now, this many years out, now it's just tied up in politics.
All right, and then along with the heritage, I saw that Tri-Council recently declared like a state of emergency for the Cherokee language. How do you respond to this, and what are your plans to ensure the survival of the Cherokee language?
All right, so right off the bat, we've created a Cherokee language training program for our tribal employees. We're encouraging employees to use the language more. What we believe is going to happen is we're going to have to have some sort of study that looks at what we're currently doing, what's working, what's not working, what are the best practices of other tribes, because there are other tribes that have been very successful in language preservation. We need to look at what they're doing. There's no need for us to reinvent the wheel, or no need for us to go down a path that other tribes could say, hey, we tried that and it didn't work. So, first and foremost, and this is, in speaking to the folks at our language immersion school and our adult immersion program, I was very frank with them. I said, this is out of my wheelhouse. I need you to help me, because, I'm not a linguist, I'm not a language teacher, I'm not a speaker, and I feel completely ill-equipped, so I need you to help me understand what do we need to do. And those were some of the things that they told me, and, we just passed a resolution today to provide the Cherokee language dictionaries to families. So we're doing everything that we can do on this end. We're going to have to take a look at the Nugadoo Academy and best practices there, and how can we improve the outcomes. We're going to have to look at Cherokee Central Schools. Do we need to incorporate more language instruction? I think it's given that we need to, because Cherokee is very difficult to learn, and having one class period a day is probably not going to be sufficient. So we're going to have to look at things like maybe after school clubs. And one thing I'm really proud of that we did was, I traveled to Cherokee Nation a couple years ago, and their adult immersion program, they're actually paying 18, 19, 20-year-olds, I think like $10 an hour to be in language immersion for 40 hours a week. We've looked at that as a best practice, and we've now adopted that, and Michael Swimmer is heading that program up.
Nice, that sounds nice. Yeah, I went to Cherokee High School, as you know, and Cherokee Central Schools. And I was in the immersion classes and everything. And then I move out here, and there's not really anyone to speak with, so it's kind of hard to, keep that up. And it's like, if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Makes a lot of sense. All right, the next question is, so the Katua LLC recently stated in an article that they are profitable. Some are curious to how much they've made and how much they're expected to make in the future.
Right, I haven't received, they just gave their first quarterly report to council. I haven't gotten the financials yet. So to say they're profitable just simply means they're operating in the black. They're not running a deficit, okay? Yeah. I always tell people, there are tribes that have had LLCs now for over 20 years, and if you look at their gross revenue, some of those tribes are grossing over $1 billion in revenue. Now that's not net, but I mean that means that they've got $1 billion worth of sales and service out there operationally through government contracts or through businesses or through mergers and acquisitions. So we've literally been at this now for a year. We got the ordinance passed my first year in office. We got the board. We created the guidelines for the board, seated the board, gave them funds to begin looking at projects. So they have 4 or 5 pretty major things in the pipeline right now. When they gave the report the other day, I asked the chairman to not televise it, just because it's not wise to put it out there on the internet and TV for the whole world that, hey, here's what we're thinking about doing. It's just not a wise business practice. And what I told council was, I said, we have to trust that the folks that we have put in place to handle this, that they're under the oversight of internal audit. They have to, they get audited, and they have to give quarterly reports. And so we'll know once the deals are inked and signed and everything's good, then they can come back and report and say, look, we now own this company and this company and this company. I know what they are, but the deals aren't finalized yet, so we can't talk about the specifics. We started them off small. They've just taken over operation of the Cherokee Phoenix Theater. So rather than having the Phoenix Theater Company manage it for us, and we have a management agreement with them, Kadua LLC is going to manage that for us. But they have some pretty major projects in the pipeline, and of course we just passed a resolution in last month's council to purchase 196 acres of commercial property at Exit 407, which the LLC vetted that for us, and there was already a master plan for that entire site. And then of course back in 2009 when the economy crashed, the developers that had that ended up getting foreclosed on. The LLC has told us that they think it has the potential to be a billion-dollar development when it's all said and done. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
And one of the other things, on that too, one of the other things we're looking at as well is we're looking at developing a brand for Cherokee. When I say a brand, we're thinking more for hotel resort. So much like the Seminoles, they purchased Hard Rock, which that is. Now on the other side of that acquisition is obviously that was a brilliant business move. We're looking at, and we're in discussions with a very large conglomerate that has a brand that we might be interested in purchasing. But we're also looking at just developing our own brand for a hotel/resort or convention center that we could place in various markets around the country. And again, because keeping in mind, economic development doesn't mean we always build something here. As you're aware, building here is very expensive. The topography, the mountains do not lend themselves to building, and it drives the cost way, way up.
All right, that's pretty exciting. The next one, they said, when I'm watching council, I hear, we've talked about this for 20 years, and the people saying it have been in their positions for 20 years. So why vote candidates that have been in office for 10 to 15, 20 years when all they do is talk and nothing gets done? So how do you respond to that, and what has your administration done that you're most proud of?
Well, I think when members of council say that, it's just rhetoric. It's like, well, we've talked about this for years and years. Well, I think it's more important to focus on what you've accomplished, right? And I think that the burden really falls back onto our voters, and here's really where I think an educated populace, at least to the point of understanding the responsibility of participating in the election process, that you should be an informed voter, and you should really ask questions. And one of the questions you should ask of somebody who's an incumbent, who's already off, is, okay, well, what have you done? Show me what you've done, right? Whereas with a candidate, you don't really know. They can tell you anything, but you don't know until they get into office what they're actually going to do. But once they're in office, then they have a record, and then you have to look at their record. That requires the voter, to do some digging and to ask some questions. So I guess that would really be my encouragement is to pick up the phone and call them. Their numbers, everybody's phone number, mine, the vice chiefs, all the council members, they're all in the one feather. And whatever community you're in, call them and ask them. Tell me what you've done over the last 2 years that is beneficial to the tribe. And I think that's important as well, is to keep in mind this idea that, well, what have you done for me lately? A lot of the decisions that we make are decisions that are in the best interest of the overall tribe. Now, that's not to say that there aren't resolutions or ordinances resolutions specifically that may benefit a certain group, i.e. the elders or the children or working families. But in general, all the decision making is for that which is in the best interest for the tribe. So it requires the voter to really do their homework and be informed. It really troubles me when I hear people say things like, well, whoever comes to see me first, that's who I'm voting for. And to me, it's irresponsible, you know. And in the day and age in which we live in, where the access to information and the access to communication everybody has it, then you know it's worth 10 minutes of your time to pick up the phone and call your candidates in your community, chief and vice chief candidates, and ask them questions. The other thing too is you know, when you look at when we have meet the candidates in all the communities, you know, the attendance at those are terrible. They really are, and that's discouraging when you're a candidate, because when you're a candidate, whether you're the incumbent or you're an up-and-coming candidate, you want to get your message out to as many people as possible. So, so it just requires the voters to be responsible and to do their homework. And then, you know, if I had to hang my hat on, you know, I think the accomplishment I'm most proud of is, you know, we came in and, you know, in the first year in office, we cut government spending by $50 million from the previous administration's budget. But we didn't cut any jobs, any programs or services. Year 2, we cut an additional $35 million without cutting any programs, services, or jobs. With that, we were able to take an additional $40 million and put that into our investment accounts, our endowments. Our earnings to date for this year have been, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we're about $41 million in interest earnings. And then, of course, creating the Cherokee Sovereign Wealth Fund, that's another thing. And again, that's another form of diversification, because once your net worth gets over $1 billion, which ours is now over $1 billion, there's a whole other set of rules for investment. So we created the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which allows us to do private equity investment, real estate, like REITs, real estate investment trust, and things of that nature. So it's a form of diversification. The convention, the expansion at the casino with the convention center, the new tower, parking deck, and hopefully the retail dining and entertainment piece, we're booking into year 5 already. And I remember there were members of council at that time who were opposed to it and like, why are we doing this? You know, this is just more gaming, and it's not gaming. It's a whole separate industry. It's a $91 billion a year industry in this country, and we're barely scratching the surface on it with the limited amount of convention space that we have at the hotel. So the fact we're booking into year 5 and they haven't even poured the first footer for the convention space yet, and they're still working on the parking deck, that's going to bode very well for us in the future.
Alright, so next, some of my peers have expressed concern about the lack of job availability after obtaining a degree. You know, we're told, like, go get your degree and come back and help your community. So what is your opinion on this, and how do you think we might open the door to more job opportunities in the future?
Well, I think the important thing to remember is this, and I remember, you know, that was kind of the slogan, you know, that we encouraged all of our young people to get their education with was, you know, go and then come back and serve your tribe, and I certainly agree with that. I think what should have been communicated was, this doesn't mean that there's going to be a tribal government job waiting for you when you come back, because the reality is that we're limited in the number of positions that we have. And I think the other challenge is and I think this is something that needs to be communicated to our young people as well. We are creating an opportunity for you, right? You're in school, you still have to go do the work. We're giving you an opportunity, you have to do the work, right? And on the back end of that, when you come back home, even if you stay in school and get an advanced degree, so you stay 6 years and you get your master's degree and you come back, I think it's important that young people understand what you still lack as human capital and experience. Because there are young people who look at, well, I have my master's, I should be a director, I should be in this upper level management. And just the simple truth is that if you lack experience, we're setting you up for failure if we pluck you right from school and put you right in an upper level management position that you just don't have the skill set yet for, because that takes time, right? You're still going to have to kind of work your way up and get that experience and build your human capital. Or as I used to tell my students, no, you still got to take your lumps. We all did, you know, and those lessons will serve you well, you know, and it's oftentimes the most painful ones that you never forget. So That being said, we have opportunities here. There are tribal jobs that are still available. There are certainly always positions available at the casino, and I get it. People say, well, I really don't want to work there. The hours are long, or you have to work nights and weekends. And again, understood. But once again, you're young and you have energy, and there were a lot of jobs that I worked when I was young, and especially because I got married young. I was 22 years old when I got married, and you do what you have to do to provide for your family, and those jobs and those things that you have to do that aren't always what you want are the things that build character, and those are the things that strengthen you, and those are the things that build human capital, so you do have that experience that when you apply for a tribal job, say that's a manager or director level or something like that, you're equipped with the skills to deal, because most of the issues are going to be like personnel matters, budgetary issues, and those things, you can teach it on paper, but until you get the experience, that's the best teacher on those.
Yeah. Okay, so along with that, a lot of candidates say we do need more jobs. So when I get my degree, what if I don't immediately want to move back home? What is the tribe doing to diversify so that we have opportunities to work for companies outside of Cherokee? So.
Yeah. So when I was teaching, I used to encourage my students all the time, and I've actually I've been chastised for this statement, but I stand behind this statement. I used to tell my students, I'd say, look, take advantage of every opportunity that the tribe offers you. Take advantage of all the higher education opportunities, because the truth of the matter is we have it made. That. I'm sure you have peers that you go to school with who are racking up student loan debt. Maybe their parents have a second mortgage on their house. Maybe their parents are working 2 and 3 jobs to pay for tuition or books or whatever. I tell my students, I would say, take advantage of every bit of that. And then when you get your degree or your certification or whatever it is, don't come back here right away. Because if you spend your entire life here in Cherokee, let's be honest, we live in a nice insulated little bubble here. We really do. And it's nice. It's comfortable. It's cozy. I love it. We all love it, right? But get out and see how the rest of the world works. Get out and get that experience in the private sector. Go out and build your human capital. And I used to tell them too, pay a mortgage, pay property taxes, pay to have your trash picked up, pay all the fees that everybody else in the world has to pay co-pays when you go to the doctor. And I said, and when you do that, when you do finally move back 5 years later or 7 years later, you will see how blessed we are here. But I said, if all you do is leave and go to school and come right back, all of these things that we have will just be, there's a normalcy bias attached to it. Well, yeah, of course that's how it is. And my fear is that we lose the appreciation for what we have if we've never had to do without.
So along with that, my experience at ASU, as Native American students who attend ASU, we have the opportunity to participate in the Tribal Nations Tour. And we pretty much hop on a bus, and it's different Native students. They try to make it pretty diverse in what kind of members they bring in. So they usually take me because I'm not from here, and I think people like to hear my accent or whatever. So yeah, but we just visit other tribal communities and promote ASU and higher education. So what could the EBCI do to support this effort, and then what would you want other tribal nations to know about the EBCI?
So one of the things that I used to encourage I was on the school improvement team at Cherokee, and I would pitch this idea every year. And I'd say, well, I really think we need to reevaluate this senior project thing we're doing, right? You remember the senior project at high school? And I said, it's basically turned into, everybody does a trifold, portfolio thing, and they come in and do their little 5-minute spiel, and that's it. I said, wouldn't it be more meaningful if we took our students and we invested the time and the money and the effort to start to build relationships with other tribal nations, and specifically tribal nations who are not as fortunate as we are. Let's be honest. You've probably been to other reservations, and they're destitute. And that's a reality. It's like third world, and it's almost 2020, and in this country there are tribal nations that are basically living by third world standards. And I said it would be more meaningful, I think, for our students to go and to do a service project for another tribal community. And really experience the blessing that it is to be a blessing for somebody else and not expecting anything in return. And it sounds like that's what you all are doing, so I applaud that. I think that the Eastern Band could and should, and I think, and I've said this on council, you know, recently I brought a resolution in when the Lakota Nation at Pine Ridge, you know, they were devastated by flooding, and I brought a resolution in asking for funding to help them, and Tribal Council appropriated $50,000 for us to send out there. And I told them on that day, I said, look, I feel like we have a duty and an obligation to help those tribes that are less fortunate than us. And I said, and I don't know, you know, what your religious beliefs are, your spiritual beliefs are, but I do believe in the principle that to whom much is given, much is required, right? And we have been extremely blessed. And I think that that is a lesson that is imperative for all of us as Eastern Band members. If you're an elder, or if you're an adult, if you're a college student, or if you're a teenager or a young child, learning that lesson of being a blessing to other people because we've been blessed with so much is one that cannot be taught too often. And then what I would want people to know about the Eastern Band is that we have lots of people here who think that way and who do that on a daily basis, and they're like the unsung heroes of our community who just do it day in and day out without looking for any recognition, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, all right. I think we just have a couple more. So what message do you have for enrolled members that do not exercise their right to vote? I heard something like only 30%-ish of registered voters voted in the primary.
That's correct, yeah. So I think it was about 39%, which is actually kind of the norm, which is very discouraging. And I think the primary, I think the reason that happens is that it's, you know, per capita comes out, a lot of people leave and go on vacation. But I mean, we have early voting, you know, so there's the opportunity to do that. And so I guess to answer the question, you know, to those folks who just don't participate and just say, well, and I, you know, I've heard all the excuses, well, they're just going to do what they want anyway. Well, that's not true. You know, the responsibility lies with the people. That is what democracy is. It is government by the people, right? And so the responsibility falls on each one of us individually. And if it turns out that we have a tribal government that is corrupt or is just ineffective, and you didn't vote, or you picked the people who are in there, you got to take responsibility for that. You know, and I think it really, again, comes back to personal responsibility. And my encouragement to folks is, you know, it doesn't take that long to do it, and it absolutely matters, especially around here. When, I mean, I'll give you a good example. Paintown, the vote count, there was one vote separating 3 of the 4 candidates.
Yeah.
So every vote counts, every vote matters. In a small community like this, you absolutely have to vote.
Yeah. Even for me, I do absentee vote
Yeah.
because I'm down here now, so no matter where you are, you can vote.
Yeah, and I would love to see Tribal Council amend our current absentee voting ordinance, because the language of it is very restrictive. The only way that you can absentee vote is if, like yourself, you're a full-time college student, if you're active duty military and deployed, if you work for the federal government and you're deployed, or you're physically disabled. If you don't meet one of those 4 criteria, you have to come here to vote. And as you know, there's only about half the enrolled members of the tribe live on the boundary. So it creates a hardship, especially if you live, 100 miles away or even 50 miles away. It's a 100-mile round trip twice to vote. So I would love to see that amended to where it was just easier for people to vote. And now, again, with technology, I mean, when that law was put in place, people didn't have access to information like they do now. And so I would really love to see that change, because the other thing is this: I don't know that we'll ever have a constitution pass, because I don't know that we'll ever meet that 51% voter turnout threshold. We haven't had 51% in I don't know how long. So any referendums that would require 51% participation will just never, it just won't happen.
All right, so lastly, what would you like all enrolled members to know about you and why you're seeking election?
I guess what I would like them to know is that my commitment from the time I ran for vice chief till now has been that I would do things in the right way, that I would follow the law and follow policy. And I think most important, that whether you supported me, whether you voted for me or not, I treat every enrolled member the same, and that I will fight for your rights, because that is what I have sworn an oath to do. It is my duty and obligation to make sure that your individual rights are protected. I understand the role of government. We've there's a culture shift happening, if you will, kind of a sea change in the way government operates, in the way it's operated in the last 2 years as compared to how it has operated for decades, which unfortunately oftentimes was, kind of just politics as usual, and we just don't do that, and I knew that going into this. I knew when I ran for the office of vice chief like 10 or 12 years ago, the first time I ran, that my whole goal was to demonstrate good governance, fair and equitable treatment for everyone. And it was my hope that that would resonate with the people, and they'd say, that's good governance, that's what we want. We just want everybody to be treated fairly and everybody to be treated equitably. And that, my goal in this now is really to just to secure our future. I mean, I tell people all the time when I'm out campaigning, I said, if you can think about tribal government as, like a bicycle wheel, the hub is really our finances. Sound fiscal management, sound fiscal policy. I said the programs and all the opportunities, the employment opportunities, the higher education opportunities, healthcare opportunities, those are just spokes in the wheel. I said if the hub fails, if our finances fail, everything else goes away. So we have to ensure, because our tribe keeps growing, we add about 40 a month to the roll through births. We lose about 12 a month to death. So it's about a net out of about 28 a month. Our tribe continues to grow. But our resources, the amount of revenue we have coming in, it grows at a much slower pace. So you have more and more people pulling on the resources, which is going to require that we manage them very, very responsibly to ensure that all the benefits that you enjoy right now, that I enjoy, that my kids enjoy, that I want my grandkids and my great-grandkids and my great-great-great-grandkids to all enjoy the same benefits and opportunities that we enjoy right now. That's my goal, that's my objective, that's my focus.
Alright, sounds pretty good. That was the last question, so if there's anything else.
No, this was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to call me. I know I'm in Arizona, so it's kind of hard, but I appreciate it.
Anyway, well, Perry, yeah, so thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really enjoy it. And anytime, just give me a holler. We'll do this again.
Alright, sounds good. Thank you.
Alright, be safe out there. Alright, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, you guys, so that pretty much closes up our interview with Mr. Richie Sneed. I really appreciate him taking the time to, call me and have a chat. Being in Arizona, it was kind of hard, if I was home, I could just show up and be like, hey, Richie. But I really do appreciate him, and also Ashley Stevens as well, who works for him, for helping me set this up. Also to everyone who submitted questions, I really appreciate it. I hope he answered your questions, and for everyone else, please share this video, like and subscribe as well. And I just want to thank you for sticking around. It's probably a long video, I know, but hey, information is key, okay? You need to know who you're voting for and what you're voting for. And honestly, I'm a supporter of Richie. He worked at the high school that I attended. So yeah, just go vote, people, all right? Y'all have a good day. Shki, thank you.